Brandon, so nice to meet you. Really thrilled that we could do this. It's an honor to have you on our show. Well, anyway, I'll let you introduce our guest, Mike Polydoros, for Ticket to Ride.
Well, we're very lucky. Our second guest on Ticket to Ride is the one and only Brandon Gregory. Brandon, how long have we known each other?
We've known each other a long time. I've known of you for longer than we've probably actually known each other.
Well, so Brandon is the president of the Kingdom Story Company, and the Kingdom Story Company is the production company formed by John Irwin, his brother Andy Irwin, and producer Kevin Downs. And while you, off the top of your head, may not realize what Kingdom is, you've seen their movies. I Can Only Imagine, I Still Believe. And coming up this week is Jesus Revolution, which, Brandon, we've been working very closely on over the last several months. And we thought it would be great for Brandon to come on today, tell us a little bit about where he was and how he got here, and more importantly, what we have to look forward to from Kingdom.
Love it. Great setup, Mike.
That was a great setup. It was too kind. I'm honored that you would have me and just slightly disappointed that I wasn't the first guest, that I have to be number 2. But I'm happy to be here nonetheless.
Well, you're number 1 in our hearts, okay?
That's all that matters.
We had the premiere for Jesus Revolution the other night over at the Man's Chinese, and it was a great event. I mean, it was fantastic. And Brandon, you guys really turned up the heat at that event.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I was glad you could be there. And our partners at Lionsgate are the best in the business. And so whether it comes to making our films, helping us market and distribute them, or putting on an event like the other night, we were just glad to be there and celebrate with everybody and grateful for their partnership.
So I thought it would be interesting for everybody to hear. Brandon's got a great story of how he started and where he got into this business. And he loves the movie business. He is a longtime cinephile. And Brandon, so how did you get started in this business again?
Yeah, it's funny. I usually tell people that you'll be hard pressed to find a bigger proponent of movie going, the theatrical experience than me, although I don't know that I can say that in this group because you two are among the biggest proponents of that. I was always enamored with the movie industry. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and just loved movies as a consumer, but was really interested in the behind the scenes of how they were made. My dream was I thought, okay, one day I'm going to direct a film. And it didn't take long for me to realize there's not a bone in my body that is wired to be a director, but I really loved just film and the process of how a film is made and then gets in front of people. And I thought the closest I'm going to get to this as a 16-year-old kid in Franklin, Tennessee, is serving popcorn at the movie theater. And so at 16, I got a job at Carmike Cinemas and loved it. And it dawned on me when I was there that, okay, there's all these years and millions of dollars and thousands of people that put their effort into making these films that I love, but it's all for this moment. I get to be there at the moment where literally all of that is for, which is when somebody walks in and buys a ticket and gets to experience it. And so I had heard about Show West. I'd seen it on Access Hollywood at Entertainment Tonight. Thought, okay, there's this industry convention in Vegas where everybody gathers and sort of talks about the movie industry. And for my 18th birthday, my grandfather said, "Hey, what do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "A Show West registration." And he said, "Okay, that's an odd birthday gift, but sure."
I love that. That is, you could end that story right now and I'm all in, but wow, Brandon, that is so cool. What a great wish and what a reward.
It was, and I remember going on to fill out the registration and, I had to click industry affiliation. And I think I put theater operations, even though I was maybe an assistant manager at the time at the theater. At 18, I looked 15, but I, put on my suit and my badge that said Carmike Cinemas and went to Show West. Had no idea what I was doing, but was just glad to be in the mix. And I was standing outside of an event, breakfast event or something at the convention. And this guy came up and started talking to me and was very kind. And he said, "I see you work for Carmike." And I said, "I do." And he said, "Well, are you out of Columbus, Georgia?" Which is where the company was based. And I said, "No, I work out of the Nashville office." Well, there was no Nashville office. It was a movie theater. And he said, "Did the company pay for you to come out here?" And I said, "No, sir, I paid for myself." And at the end of the conversation, he introduced himself, and it was Mike Patrick, who of course is the Mike of Carmike. And he said, "Well, next year we want to pay for you to come out here. And while you're here, I want to introduce you to all the people that run your company." And so that trip, I got to know the corporate office at Carmike. I got to meet their marketing and advertising and film departments. And it just began, it was a trajectory change in my career. I began working closely with the corporate office at Carmike and held a role there up until the company was sold, more of an advisory role. But just champions of mine came out of that one meeting. John Lundeen probably the greatest champion of mine. He was a good friend and mentor to this day. And through John, I was a kid just wanting to learn how the industry worked. He introduced me to giants, like David Spitz. I met through John Lundeen and Rory Brewer and Adam Fogelson, who's now at Lionsgate, and, Richie Fay, Kyle Davey. I just got to, as a kid, meet these guys and ask them, how does this work? I think what was the coolest thing to me about it was I realized how this massive industry suddenly seemed very small. That these guys all got the handful of studios, handful of exhibitors at the time, and these guys all know each other. They're friends, most of them, and they've switched sides from exhibition to distribution. And this is how it's decided what movies are going out on American movie screens. And that part of the process I loved. And so I'm a fan of exhibition to this day. And we make our movies at Kingdom Story Company to be seen in the movie theaters. And it's very much in my blood.
And you've had a lot of success. I was going through our ComScore data. I got to look you up, Brandon. I knew of you, of course, and really thrilled to have you on the show, but I look up some of these films. The performance of these movies is tremendous. And Mike and I are a big fan of multiples, opening weekend multiples. And I think most people who are listening to this know what that is, but like on American Underdog, for example, almost a 7 times multiple on that film. That's really an impressive number. And the opening weekend on I Still Believe, $9.1 million. I mean...
Well, and Paul, let's put I Still Believe into context as well. Look at the date of when that movie opened. That was right when everything started shutting down.
Yeah.
It did $9.1 million as Saturday and Sunday tailed off into oblivion. And, that movie probably deserved to do closer to 15, 16 opening weekend. And I saw that movie 4, 5, 6 times. And it was, if you get a chance to see it, I fully recommend it.
And Mike, you make a great point. The release date was March 13, 2020. I have emblazoned in my brain one of the worst days ever, March 20, 2020, which was a week later when movie theaters essentially shut down. And several weeks later, it all switched to drive-ins, which was a great story, but that's, we can get to that at some point. But I think it's just really amazing how well that film did right when there was so much uncertainty. So there's a bit of magic there, the fact that you were able to do that kind of business, and imagine what would have happened had the tragic events of the pandemic not started and all of that. But definitely the movie...
Trust us, Paul. We imagine that. We imagine that often. What would happen?
You can only imagine.
There you go.
You like what I did there.
There you go. You can only imagine.
That film was the first film under our partnership with Lionsgate. We were coming off of 2018's I Can Only Imagine, which was independently financed, independently raised the money for marketing. Our friends at Roadside took it out. And so it's obviously in the Lionsgate family. And it just far surpassed anything we could have imagined. Again, no pun intended.
That was a huge hit. The opening weekend, $17.1 million, $83.5 million domestic gross. Incredible.
I think it was the biggest independent film of the year. So coming off of that success, that's where Kingdom Story Company was formed. Part of that, our partnership with Lionsgate, I Still Believe, was the first film out of the gate. And I remember we had our premiere event in Nashville. We had 2 premieres, one in California. We had one in Nashville like 2 days before the film opened. And during the course of the screening, everybody's phones were going off and it's like the NBA's canceled. Disney World shut down. And we were like, okay, this is not good. The lovely thing is that I think because of what that film said, it was a very inspiring, hope-filled movie about hope in times that seemed very hopeless. And we were able to not only do great business that weekend despite everything, but really connect with people in their homes. Lionsgate worked quickly to move to a PVOD following that, and like so many studios were. And I think a lot of people were able to connect to it in their homes, and hopefully it brought some hope in a time of chaos.
And I wanted to point to the movie we have coming up this week, The Jesus Revolution. And I was not familiar with the story when I saw the film. And it is really an interesting story. And Brandon, do you want to set the table on this one a little bit?
Yeah, of course. John Irwin is the co-director of the film, one of the principals of our company. He's wanted to tell the story for years. And we actually were a month away from production in 2020. We were supposed to shoot in May of 2020, and it got pushed. It was a different cast. The script was different. So the timing of it's perfect. It takes place in the late 60s, early 70s in Southern California. And the hippie movement is sort of ending. And all these hippies are turning away from drugs and trying to find what's next. Where's the answer? If it wasn't in this, where is it? And there's a hippie street preacher named Lonnie Frisbee. We're a down on his luck pastor named Chuck Smith. and they team up, and you see just this radical transformation in the lives of these hippies in Southern California, turning their lives to Christ. And it really swept the nation and is considered the last great sort of spiritual awakening in American history. So it's this beautiful period piece that has a lot of heart. It's funny. And I think the timing is very similar to the late 60s, early 70s, when it feels like everybody's at opposition with each other. There's sort of chaos, and it's about finding hope and unity in the midst of that.
And it has probably one of the best soundtracks you're ever going to hear. I know, Brandon, you were tasked with trying to clear a lot of that music, which sounds like it probably wasn't a lot of fun to do that piece of it.
Yeah, we have a great team. Kevin Edelman, our music supervisor, and Hillary Holmes and her team at Lionsgate. It was definitely a task, but it's great. It's all period music, and yet they did a stellar job putting it together.
Am I going to dig it?
Yeah, you're going to dig it. It's all classic 60s, early 70s rock. It's such an interesting story because it's the founding Greg Laurie, who is the founder of the Harvest Ministry, which is one of the largest church groups, I guess, in the country, if I'm not mistaken, and how this came to be. And it's a story, like I said, I did not know about. It's very, very interesting, and it gives a new perspective, to me at least, on how this is all rooted and where it all came from. And as Brandon said, it all comes out of the hippie drug culture. And I had no idea that it had actually found itself from that part of it. And it really is a great story, and it has a lot of heart. And we talk about her all the time, but Amanda on my team was in tears, I think 3 or 4 times as we were watching the film.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to hear.
Brandon, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the perception of audiences. What are audiences looking for? What kind of films are uplifting and inspirational that also have a message for everyone? The reason your movies do so well are that they speak to a lot of different folks. You could be from any background, from anywhere in the world, and these stories seem to have that kind of universal appeal. And like with any genre, I hate to put anything in a box, like the term rom-com, right? People run from that, or other ways to pigeonhole certain genres. How would you characterize your films? I don't want to say it because I want you to tell me, how do you look at your films? Do they fit in a neat box, or are they just great storytelling that are appealing to everyone in these films?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we're based in Nashville, so we're in the heart of Music City there, primarily country music and Christian music, faith music. And we did a documentary last year called Jesus Music on the history of contemporary Christian music. And something that was interesting that we discovered in the middle of that process was that Christian music is the only musical genre that is defined by its lyrical content, not by its musical styling. And so there's all these different genres under that umbrella of Christian music. And I think for faith films, it's similar, right? Faith films are saying something, they're reflecting the worldview that Christians have, but there can be different genres, inside that bucket. And we have found, John and Andy and Kevin Downs, our partners in our company, really found, coming off of our movie Woodlawn, which was the film right before I Can Only Imagine, the power in a true story. And so it's hard to argue with a life that's been changed or a moment in time. And so since then, our stories have been, Woodlawn's a true story, I Can Only Imagine, I Still Believe, American Underdog, and now Jesus Revolution is a true story. And so it's important for us, I think, our hope is that our movies are authentic to the time period or the character, the real people story that we're telling. They're authentic to their faith journey, but that they're accessible no matter what you believe. John Irwin likes to say sort of what we're chasing is that Frank Capra-esque quality in a movie, and it's really a rush of hope. And so with our films, we really just want to inspire audiences and have them leave in the theater with a rush of hope and wanting to make the world a better place. And hopefully that happens regardless of what you believe. And I think that we've succeeded at that with our films. Our films, they're well received by people inside Christianity, inside the church and outside the church. And specifically Jesus Revolution, for a film that has Jesus in the title, it's probably our best received film for people outside of Christianity, just because it's saying something much broader than that.
That's really interesting. And I think it's cool too, because Mike and I always talk about underserved audiences, if you will, or those who feel like movies aren't made for them. For example, more mature audiences have often felt left out of the equation. And over the past year, they've shown a real desire to go back to the movie theater. I think also faith-based audiences feel the same way often, that they are marginalized, or that the storytelling that appeals to that audience isn't out there, but it is, and your company is doing that. And the numbers, look, no matter what you think of any piece of content, the numbers tell you the story of how much interest there is in a particular movie. And it's not just about the numbers, obviously, with your films, but your films have done it extraordinarily well. And I think that's a reflection of the storytelling, the stories that you choose to tell, release dates, all that other good stuff, and your love of cinema.
I think the other thing too is when John and Andy and Brandon and Kevin put a movie together, they look at it like a movie, and it's a movie first is what it comes down to. And when you look at Jesus Revolution, I mean, the cast is fantastic. I mean, Brandon, you have Kelsey Grammer and anchoring the cast.
Jonathan Rumi, who's on a hit show right now called The Chosen, that's massive, not just with faith audiences, but has permeated into mainstream culture. And Kimberly Williams Paisley. We've got an incredible cast.
And when you see the cast in action and you see the quality of the movie making, it does immerse you into the film. And to Brandon's point, whether you are the target audience or not, it's just an interesting story that's very well done, that you leave the movie coming out going, that was very enjoyable.
And the music too, from what I understand, right? So you're speaking my language. If you're talking late 60s rock or psychedelic rock, yep, or that genre, Mike, you're spot on, because like with a great cast and all that, it really does bring a lot to the table. But I love what you said earlier, Brandon, about with Christian music, it's about the lyrics. There isn't like a Christian sound necessarily. It could be guitars, drums, and bass and all that, but in keyboards, but it's in the lyrics, just like in a script. I think that you get the real intention, the point of view, and the message that a lot of people really and obviously enjoy and want to hear. It plays out well. And I love that you're doing this in the movie theater. As we talked about at the top of this, no better way to see a movie, and in a way that having people in that communal environment of the movie theater is analogous to other communal environments where you get that energy from people. You know, Zoom meeting is one thing, or a small screen presentation of a movie is one thing. If you're sitting alone, it's a different experience. But if you're in that communal environment, it sort of brings so much more to the table. And for these films, I think that's really important, for your films in particular.
No, I couldn't agree more. There's nothing that can replace that. And I think that our bet, especially with Jesus Revolution coming up, is that our audience wants to gather. They want to experience things together, whether that's service at a church, whether that's a concert, whether that's a film. And there really has not been an event for the faith audience since the pandemic. And we believe that it's a category of film that will work. Every week, as you guys know, and you talk about on your podcast, it's sort of changing the narrative. Narrative forever was females are not going back to the theater until you actually gave females content that they went to go see in the theater. And then, of course, they showed up. And so we believe our audience, our core audience, is they want to gather. They want to experience films together. And we hope that this, again, will just be another great story for the industry of a category of movie that is working theatrically.
I wanted to ask you, Brandon, what's coming up next?
We have a great film that's in the can called Ordinary Angels, another true story, takes place in Louisville, Kentucky. Hilary Swank stars in it in a performance that's unlike anything I've seen from her before. It's very Aaron Brockovich, and it's beautiful, along with Alan Richardson, who's star of Amazon's Reacher. And so we will be bringing that, probably dating that sometime later in this year, but that's next on for us.
Well, this is so cool. Brandon Gregory, thank you so much for appearing on Ticket to Ride. It's a real honor. And your movie's coming up later this week on the 24th of February, Jesus Revolution, The Jesus Revolution, in theaters. Correct?
Only in theaters.
Only in theaters.
Exclusively.
How many ways can we say that? We just got to get that word out, only in theaters.
Trust us. Listen, in every marketing campaign in Hollywood, I know they're talking about this and we're no different, but it's, how do we make this crystal clear in our Instagram ads, on our faith, exclusively, only? And so yes, it is. You can only see it in theaters, which is how this movie was made. And guys, I'm grateful that you would have me. I'm a big fan of the show. I appreciate you wanting me to come on and chat with you today.
Brandon, it's always great hanging out with you. And you didn't even prank me during the entire call, Ike here. I'm very impressed with that.
Yeah, there's not much to do on a Zoom, but I'll figure out one next time we're together.
Don't worry, Brandon. Mike Polydoros lives near me. I can go prank him for you. You just tell me what to do.
I would love to have his home address.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it.
David Spitz. That's.
Well, thanks again, Brandon. Thanks for being on Ticket to Ride. And thank you, Mike Polydoros.
Always great to see you guys, and looking forward to talking about the numbers of the Jesus Revolution come Monday.
And we will be doing that, Brandon. We'll be all over that.
I know you will. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Take care.